Once the deal closes, the marriage dissolves. Clean. Surgical. She'll never see it coming. The words sliced through the morning air like broken glass. Zainab stood frozen outside the study door, her bare feet cold against marble that suddenly felt like ice beneath an ocean. Her husband's voice, calm, businesslike, utterly devoid of the vulnerability she'd felt in his arms just hours ago, continued without pause. Sade, I need you to finalize the offshore accounts. Her family's signatures are secured. The merger completes Friday. After that, she's no longer necessary. Necessary. The word echoed in Zainab's chest, hollow and sharp. She pressed her hand against the doorframe to steady herself, her silk robe, the one he'd slowly untied in the darkness, now feeling like a costume, like evidence of her own foolishness. She didn't wait to hear more. She already understood everything. Hello, family. Welcome back. Before we go any further, I want to ask something important. Please subscribe. Your support breathes life into these stories. When you subscribe, you're not just following a channel. You're joining a movement that believes broken hearts can still choose dignity. Drop a comment and let me know where you're watching from. This one will stay with you. 3 months earlier, the wedding was a spectacle designed to blind. Crystal chandeliers caught the afternoon sun streaming through floor-to-ceiling windows. White orchids imported from Thailand spilled across tables that cost more than most families earned in a year. Photographers circled like well-dressed vultures, capturing the union of two empires, one rising, one desperately clinging to the wreckage of its fall. Zainab Lawal stood at the altar in a gown worth a fortune, feeling like currency being exchanged. Across from her, Malik Adeyemi, billionaire, enigma, stranger, watched her with eyes that revealed nothing. His tuxedo was perfectly tailored. His jaw was set. His expression could have been carved from the same marble that lined his oceanfront estate. When the officiant asked if he took her as his wife, Malik's "I do" sounded like a signature on a contract. When Zainab whispered her own vows, she tasted ash. The room erupted in applause. Champagne flowed. Business partners congratulated Malik on his strategic alliance. Zainab's mother gripped her hand too tightly, whispering desperate gratitude for the mercy this marriage represented. The rescue from ruin, the salvation from scandal, the price paid for survival. Her father, once a banking titan before corruption charges destroyed him, didn't attend. He couldn't face the daughter he'd sold to save himself. Malik didn't kiss her after the vows. He simply offered his arm, and she took it, and they walked down the aisle as husband and wife, two people bound by law and necessity, separated by everything else. That night, in the estate that would become her beautiful prison, Malik showed her to her room. Not their room. Her room. "You'll have everything you need," he said, his voice polite, distant. "Staff will accommodate any request. My assistant will coordinate your public appearances. The merger completes in 3 months. Until then, we maintain the illusion." "Illusion," Zainab repeated softly. "Marriage," Malik clarified, as if the two words were interchangeable. He turned to leave, then paused at the threshold. For a moment, just a heartbeat, something flickered across his face. Regret? Hesitation? She couldn't tell. "Your family's debt is cleared," he added. "Your mother and siblings are protected. You kept your part of the bargain. And yours?" Zainab asked, her voice steadier than her heartbeat. "I always keep mine." The door closed with a soft click that sounded like finality. Zainab stood alone in a room larger than her childhood home, surrounded by luxury that felt like evidence against her. She walked to the window overlooking the Atlantic, where waves crashed against rocks in the darkness, relentless and indifferent. She whispered to herself, a promise or a prayer. "I am not broken. I am surviving. I am not powerless. I am watching." She didn't know yet how true those words would become. She didn't know that 3 months later, she would stand outside another door, listening to her husband confirm her worst fear, that she had been leverage all along. That love, when it finally arrived, would come too late to save either of them. The house was a masterpiece of glass and silence. Every morning, Zainab woke to sunlight pouring through floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked the Atlantic. The waves rolled in with the same rhythm as her loneliness, constant, predictable, wearing her down grain by grain. Malik was rarely home. When he was, he moved through the estate like a ghost in expensive suits, present but untouchable, polite but unreachable. He took breakfast alone in his study. He returned late from meetings that stretched into midnight. He spoke to her only when necessary, his words carefully measured, professionally distant. "There's a charity gala Friday. We'll need to attend together." The British ambassador is visiting next week. Prepare remarks about education initiatives. Your mother called. I've arranged for her account to be funded. Every interaction was a transaction. Every conversation had an agenda. Zainab learned to navigate the silence. She walked the estate's gardens in the early mornings, her feet bare against dew-covered grass, breathing air that tasted like salt and captivity. She read in the library, thick novels about women who escaped, who fought back, who survived. She watched Lagos from her window, a city pulsing with life she could no longer touch. The staff pitied her. She saw it in their careful eyes, their gentle voices when they asked if she needed anything. The housekeeper, Mama Kemi, sometimes sat with her over tea, filling the silence with stories about her own children, her grandchildren, the life Zainab might never have. He's not cruel, Mama Kemi said one afternoon, pouring imported Earl Grey into delicate china. But he's not here either. Zainab smiled without warmth. No, he's not. But in public, everything changed. At the charity gala, Malik's hand rested possessively on the small of her back as they navigated rooms full of Nigeria's elite. When an older businessman made a careless comment about young brides and old family names, Malik's voice cut through the laughter like a blade. Speak about my wife with respect, or don't speak at all. The room went silent. The businessman stammered an apology. Malik didn't acknowledge it. He simply guided Zainab away, his jaw tight, his grip firm but not unkind. She didn't understand it. The protection without intimacy. The possession without desire. At a corporate dinner, a minister's wife whispered too loudly about arranged marriages and purchased loyalty. Before Zainab could respond, Malik appeared at her side, his presence shifting the entire room's atmosphere. My wife, he said, his voice low and dangerous, is worth more than anyone in this room will ever comprehend, including me. The minister's wife flushed and retreated. Malik's hand found Zainab's, his fingers lacing through hers just long enough for the cameras to capture the moment. Then he released her, the warmth evaporating as quickly as it appeared. Zainab's heart betrayed her in those moments. It beat faster. It hoped foolishly. Late one night, she found him on the terrace, staring at the ocean with a glass of whiskey catching moonlight. She should have returned to her room. She should have maintained the distance he'd constructed so carefully. Instead, she stepped outside. Can't sleep? She asked softly. Malik didn't turn. I rarely do. Zainab moved closer, the night air cool against her skin. Is it the merger? The deal? It's always the deal. His voice carried something she hadn't heard before, exhaustion maybe, or honesty. That's all I know how to do. Build, acquire, win. And when you've won everything? Zainab asked. What then? Finally, he looked at her. Really looked. His eyes traced her face like he was seeing her for the first time, like she'd just materialized from the darkness instead of living under his roof for weeks. I don't know, he admitted. The vulnerability lasted only seconds before his walls reconstructed. He finished his whiskey in one swallow and set the glass down with finality. You should rest. We have another appearance tomorrow. He walked past her, and for a moment, just a heartbeat, his shoulder brushed hers. The contact was accidental, brief, electric. Zainab stood alone on the terrace, her hand pressed against the spot where he'd touched her, wondering why her body responded to a man who treated her like a contract clause. She whispered into the wind, I am not broken. I am surviving. I am not powerless. I am watching. But something new had been added to her prison. Something more dangerous than isolation. Hope. If you love stories about dignity, survival, and the complicated truth about power and love, please subscribe. Share this with someone who needs to hear it. Comment below and tell me, have you ever hoped for someone who couldn't see you? Let's build this community together. Sade Holloway arrived on a Tuesday, draped in white linen and quiet menace. Zainab watched from the library window as the sleek black car pulled up to the estate's entrance. The woman who emerged moved like she owned the ground beneath her feet, confident, elegant, American in a way that made everything around her feel provincial. Malik met her at the door. Zainab couldn't hear their conversation, but she saw the familiarity in how they stood. Too close. Too easy. The kind of proximity that comes from shared history, from knowing someone's body as well as their secrets. At dinner that night, Sade sat across from Zainab, her smile sharp as cut glass. So you're the bride, Sade said, swirling wine in her crystal glass. Malik mentioned the arrangement. Very practical. Arrangement. Zainab repeated the word carefully. Is that what he called it? What else would you call it? Sade's eyes glittered with something that looked like pity but tasted like poison. A business merger requires collateral. You're quite lovely collateral, I'll give him that. Malik's fork paused midair. Sade. The warning in his voice was clear, but Sade only laughed, light, dismissive, intimate. Oh, don't be sensitive. I'm sure Zainab understands the reality of her situation. She's not naive. Sade leaned forward, her gaze pinning Zainab in place. Are you, darling? Zainab's hands trembled in her lap, but her voice stayed steady. I understand more than you think. Good. Sade sat back, satisfied. Then we'll get along perfectly. Over the following days, Sade became a shadow Zainab couldn't escape. She appeared at breakfast, discussing investment portfolios with Malik in language that excluded Zainab entirely. She accompanied them to business meetings, her hand resting casually on Malik's arm, her laughter filling spaces that had once been silent. She spoke about New York, about restaurants they'd loved, trips they'd taken, memories Zainab wasn't part of and never would be. Remember that winter in Aspen? Sade asked one evening, her voice honeyed with nostalgia. When we got snowed in for 3 days? Malik's jaw tightened. That was a long time ago. Not that long. Sade's smile didn't reach her eyes. Some things don't fade, no matter how much time passes. Zainab excused herself, her chest tight with something she refused to name as jealousy. She had no claim to him. No right to feel betrayed by a past that predated her existence in his life. But her heart didn't understand contracts. Malik found her later, standing on the terrace where they'd spoken weeks before. Sade is here for business, he said without preamble. Nothing more. Zainab didn't turn. You don't owe me explanations. I know. Then why are you giving me one? Silence stretched between them, heavy with things neither could say. Finally, Malik moved closer, close enough that she could feel the heat of him against her back. Because you deserve them, he said quietly. Even if this marriage is an arrangement? Zainab's voice cracked. Collateral? A necessary evil? Zainab. She knows you, Malik. Really knows you. And I'm just the girl you bought to close a deal. She expected him to agree, to confirm what Sade had already made abundantly clear. Instead, his hand caught her wrist, turning her to face him. His eyes burned with something she'd never seen before, frustration, conflict, something dangerously close to need. You think I see you as collateral? His voice was rough. You think I? Thunder cracked across the sky, cutting him off. The first raindrops fell heavy and sudden, a Lego storm arriving without warning. Within seconds, the terrace was drenched, rain pounding the marble like accusations. We should go inside, Zainab said, but neither of them moved. The rain plastered her dress against her skin. Malik's white shirt turned transparent, clinging to the body she'd only imagined beneath expensive suits. Water streamed down his face, and in that moment, he looked less like a billionaire and more like a man, lost, conflicted, drowning. Malik. She didn't know if she was warning him or pleading with him. Lightning split the sky. Thunder shook the ground. And in that violent flash of light, she slipped. Her feet went out from under her on the slick marble. She gasped, arms flailing for purchase. Malik caught her. His arms wrapped around her waist, pulling her hard against his chest. Their faces were inches apart, both breathing hard, rain streaming between them like a baptism. I've got you, he whispered. Another crack of thunder. And then his lips were on hers. Not gentle. Not careful. Desperate. The kiss tasted like rain and years of denial. His hand cradled the back of her head, his other arm crushing her against him like she might disappear if he let go. Zainab's fingers dug into his shoulders, her body responding to something primal and honest, the first honest thing between them. When they broke apart, both were shaking. This can't, Malik started. I know, Zainab whispered. But neither moved. Neither let go. The storm raged around them, and something inside both of them shattered beyond repair. Inside the house, watching from a darkened window, Sade smiled. Everything was going exactly according to plan. Subscribe if you believe in stories that show the truth about love, that it's beautiful and brutal, and sometimes arrives at exactly the wrong moment. Drop a comment. Have you ever wanted someone you knew you couldn't have? You're not alone. Let's walk through this story together. They didn't speak about the kiss. For 3 days, Malik avoided her entirely, leaving before dawn, returning after midnight, communicating only through his assistant. Zainab wandered the estate like a ghost haunting her own life, replaying that moment on the terrace until it felt more like fever dream than memory. But on the 4th night, he came to her door. No knock, no warning, Just the soft click of the handle turning, and suddenly he was there, still in his suit but disheveled, tie loosened, hair disrupted by anxious fingers. His eyes found hers across the dimly lit room, and the hunger in them made her breath catch. "I can't stop thinking about you," he said, voice raw. "I've tried. God knows I've tried." Zainab stood frozen by the window. "Malik, tell me to leave." He stepped closer. "Tell me this is wrong, that I'm breaking every rule I set. Tell me you don't feel this too." She should have. She should have protected them both from the inevitable destruction. Instead, she whispered, "I can't." The distance between them evaporated. His hands cupped her face like she was something precious and terrifying. His kiss was different from the terrace, not desperate now but deliberate, claiming. His fingers traced the curve of her spine, learning the shape of her through silk nightwear that suddenly felt like too much barrier between them. "Zainab," he breathed against her neck, and hearing her name in his voice, finally truly her name, undid something fundamental inside her. They moved together like people drowning, clinging to the only solid thing in a world that had become untethered. His suit jacket hit the floor. Her nightgown followed. The moonlight painted them in silver as they found each other with a hunger that had been building for months. It wasn't gentle. It was need made flesh. Two lonely people reaching for connection in a house built on lies. His hands mapped territories he'd denied himself. Her fingers dug into his shoulders, anchoring herself to something real, something true, something that felt like it could save her. When it was over, they lay tangled in sheets that smelled like rain and ruin. Malik's arm draped across her waist, his breath warm against her shoulder. For the first time since their wedding night, Zainab felt like a wife instead of a transaction. "Stay," she whispered into the darkness. His arm tightened around her. "I'm not going anywhere." She believed him. She fell asleep believing him. Morning came too soon and too cruel. Zainab woke to an empty bed and voices drifting from downstairs. She pulled on her robe, the silk one Malik had untied hours before, and moved toward the sound, drawn by something she couldn't name. Instinct. Intuition. Dread. She stopped outside the study door. Once the deal closes, the marriage dissolves. Clean. Surgical. She'll never see it coming. Malik's voice. Calm. Businesslike. Utterly devoid of the vulnerability she'd heard when he whispered her name in the darkness. Zainab's hand flew to her mouth, trapping the sound that wanted to escape. "Sade, I need you to finalize the offshore accounts. Her family's signatures are secured. The merger completes Friday. After that, she's no longer necessary." Necessary. The word detonated in her chest like a bomb with a delayed fuse. "You're certain she doesn't suspect?" Sade's voice now, smooth and satisfied. "She trusts me." A pause. "Or she will after last night." Emotional attachment makes people compliant. Predictable. Zainab pressed her fist against her sternum, trying to hold her ribcage together, trying to keep her heart from shattering into pieces too small to ever reassemble. "The files from her father's accounts?" Sade asked. "Secured. The corruption evidence we needed, the offshore routing numbers, the political connections, everything. Her family's disgrace becomes our leverage. Once I have full control of the merged assets, she becomes a liability I can't afford. And if she fights back?" Malik's laugh was cold. "She won't. She has nothing. No money, no power, no allies. Where would she even go?" Zainab's bare feet carried her backward, silent on marble that suddenly felt like ice. Her body moved on autopilot, to her room, to her closet, to the small bag she'd brought from her old life. Her hands shook as she packed. Not everything. Just essentials. Documents. Passport. The one photograph of her siblings she couldn't abandon. She moved through the estate like smoke, invisible to staff who'd learned not to see her. The sun was rising over the Atlantic, painting the water gold. The same water she'd stared at for months, believing she was building something real. In the garden, she paused by the flowers Mama Kemi had taught her to tend. She touched a white orchid, the same flowers that had decorated her wedding, and whispered, "I am not broken. I am choosing. I am not powerless. I am leaving." The gate opened silently. The street beyond waited, anonymous and liberating. Zainab walked through it without looking back. Behind her, the estate stood gleaming in morning light, a beautiful prison she'd finally escaped. Inside, Malik would wait to find her gone. He would search empty rooms and call her name. He would discover, too late, that the woman he'd underestimated had been watching all along. But that reckoning belonged to the future. This morning belonged to freedom. Malik found the empty room at dawn. The bed still carried her scent, jasmine and something uniquely hers that had become necessary to him without his permission. Her closet gaped open, most of her belongings abandoned like evidence of a life she'd decided wasn't worth saving. No note, no explanation, no demand for justice or revenge. Just absence, complete and devastating. "Sir?" His assistant appeared at the door, tablet in hand. "The merger documents are ready for final signature. We close in 48 hours. Everything you've worked for. Find her." Malik's voice cracked on the words. "Find my wife." But Zainab had vanished like smoke through fingers. No credit card transactions. No flight records. No trail for his investigators to follow. She disappeared into Lagos, a city of 20 million people where a woman who wanted to be invisible could become a ghost. The merger closed on schedule. Malik stood in a boardroom surrounded by congratulations, champagne, handshakes from men who believed he'd won. The contracts were immaculate. The assets secured. His empire had doubled overnight. He felt nothing. 3 months later, the first irregularities appeared. Small at first, a redirected payment, a frozen account, funds moved to destinations his forensic accountants couldn't immediately trace. Then larger discrepancies. Offshore holdings that should have been liquid were suddenly locked behind legal challenges. Political connections he'd relied on mysteriously withdrew support. And beneath it all, a pattern. A signature. Zainab's. Malik stood in his study, the same room where he'd casually discussed her disposal, staring at documents that proved everything. Before she left, in the weeks he'd been so busy preparing her betrayal, she'd been preparing her own. She'd altered key documents. Not to steal, never to steal, but to redirect, to protect. Funds earmarked for offshore tax havens now flowed to education initiatives for girls from broken families. Money meant for political bribes had been rerouted to legal defense funds for families destroyed by corporate corruption, families like her own. The employees who would have lost their pensions in the merger's fine print. Protected by clauses she'd quietly inserted, signed with her own hand using access he'd granted her without thought. She'd sacrificed her freedom to save others. She'd used the very power he'd given her, believing her compliant, predictable, broken, to dismantle the cruelest parts of his design. The forensic report included one final detail, a single account she'd left completely untouched. Her own family's restoration fund, the millions Malik had promised to clear their name. She could have taken it and disappeared into comfort. She'd left every naira behind. Malik's hands trembled as he read her final move. A legal document, filed the day she disappeared, that reclaimed her maiden name. She'd erased herself from his life as thoroughly as he'd planned to erase her. But she'd done it with dignity, with honor, with a moral clarity he'd abandoned years ago. 6 months passed, then a year. Malik's empire stood untouched by scandal, his reputation pristine. But the house echoed with absence. He walked through rooms where she'd once stood, tracing the ghost of her presence. The terrace where they'd kissed in the rain. The library where she'd read books about women who escaped. The bedroom where he'd finally let himself want her, just hours before she'd overheard the truth. Sade returned to New York, their professional relationship dissolved. "You're not the same," she'd said before leaving. "She broke something in you that I don't think you want to fix." She was right. Malik hired investigators across 3 continents. He followed whispers and rumors. A woman matching her description working in a refugee center in Accra. Another sighting at a women's shelter in Nairobi. A teacher in a rural village whose students spoke of her kindness. Every lead evaporated. Zainab had learned well from him. How to disappear, how to become someone new, how to survive. Late one night, standing on the terrace where everything had changed, Malik whispered into the wind. "I'm sorry." The ocean offered no absolution. The city lights glittered without judgment. Somewhere out there, Zainab was alive, free, building a life he'd never be part of. He'd won everything he'd ever wanted, and lost the only thing that mattered. 2 years later, a package arrived at the estate with no return address. Inside, a single photograph, Zainab, older now, smiling in a way she never had in his house. Genuine, unguarded, free. She stood surrounded by children in school uniforms, her hand resting on the shoulder of a young girl whose eyes held the same wounded strength Zainab's once had. On the back, in her handwriting, she was not broken. She was free. She was not powerless. She chose dignity. She was not yours. She was always her own. Malik traced the words with fingers that would never touch her again. He understood now, too late, what he'd destroyed. Not a transaction. Not collateral. Not a necessary evil. A woman who could have loved him. A woman who deserved better than his hollow empire. A woman who saved herself when he refused to. He placed the photograph on his desk where he would see it every day, a reminder of the cost of power without conscience, of victory without soul. Zainab never came back. She never forgave him. And Malik lived the rest of his life knowing that some mistakes are too profound for redemption. That love, when it arrives too late, becomes the cruelest truth of all. The story ended not with reconciliation, but with consequence. She survived. He succeeded. And the space between them remained forever unbridgeable. A testament to the moment he chose empire over humanity, and she chose freedom over everything.